Today, if you want to build something enormous, you bring machinery, excavators, cranes, trucks, bulldozers. Basically, if something is heavy, we tell a machine, you lift it. But now imagine going back about 4,500 years. No engines, no steel cranes, no diesel trucks, no modern power tools, and standing in front of you is the Great Pyramid of Giza, a gigantic stone structure that was once about 146 meters tall. And you're thinking, okay, who brought the crane? There isn't one. So, how did they do it? The Great Pyramid was built for Pharaoh Khufu during Egypt's Old Kingdom, around the 26th century BCE. It originally stood around 146 meters high, and it was built mainly from enormous quantities of limestone. We're talking about roughly 2.3 million stone blocks, according to common archaeological estimates. Now, imagine hearing, good news! Today's job is moving another giant rock. How many? Yes. But here's the important part. They didn't build the pyramid by somehow lifting every block straight into the air. They used something much more powerful: organization. Before stacking millions of stones, they needed a good foundation. The construction area had to be prepared and leveled. And the Great Pyramid's base is remarkably precise. Its four sides are oriented very closely to the cardinal directions: north, south, east, west. But how could people thousands of years ago achieve that? They had no GPS. Actually, they had something better for this particular problem: the sky. Egyptian surveyors could use observations of celestial bodies to help establish directions. They also used practical surveying techniques involving ropes, measurements, and levels. So, before the pyramid went UP, they had to get the ground right. Because if your foundation is crooked, your giant pyramid becomes a giant stone disaster. Congratulations, Pharaoh. You built the world's largest triangle. Now we have another problem. The pyramid needs stone, a lot of stone. Most of the core limestone came from quarries relatively close to Giza, but some materials traveled much farther. Fine limestone used for the outer casing came from Tura, across the Nile. Granite used in parts of the pyramid and internal structures came from Aswan, far to the south. That's hundreds of kilometers. So, how do you move a giant piece of stone hundreds of kilometers without a truck? You use the Nile. Stone could be transported by water, and this is one of the biggest advantages ancient Egyptians had. Egypt wasn't just desert, it had the Nile. The river was basically an enormous natural highway. Instead of pushing every block across the entire country, they could move heavy materials by boat whenever the geography allowed. Welcome aboard. Destination: Giza. Cargo? One rock. Just one. But first, they had to extract the stone. Ancient Egyptian workers used tools made from materials including stone and copper, depending on the task and period. Hard stone such as granite required different techniques from softer limestone. Workers could use pounding, cutting, abrasion, and other methods to shape stone. For some hard stone work, abrasive materials such as sand helped with cutting and smoothing. And here's the thing, they didn't need one magical tool. They needed the right tool, for the right material, and a lot of patience. Day 1, almost finished. Day 30, still almost finished. Day 300. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Now let's destroy one common misconception. Ancient Egyptians weren't standing underneath a 2-ton block saying, "Everybody ready? 1, 2, 3." That would be a terrible construction strategy. Instead, they could use mechanical advantage. Levers, ropes, sledges, and probably ramps were essential to moving materials upward. A heavy stone on a sledge can be moved by multiple workers pulling together. An experiment suggests that wetting sand in front of a sledge can reduce the force needed to pull it. So instead of lift the block, the strategy becomes make the block easier to move. That's a huge difference. And now we reach one of the biggest mysteries. How did the stones get higher and higher? The answer almost certainly involved some form of ramp system. But here's the important part. Archaeologists do not have a single universally accepted reconstruction showing exactly how every stage was done. There are different theories: straight ramps, zigzagging ramps, ramps along parts of the pyramid, and other combinations of lifting and hauling methods. The pyramid itself grew, and the construction system had to adapt. At lower levels, moving stones upward was easier. As the pyramid became taller, the engineering challenge became harder. Worker: How much higher? Supervisor. That. Worker. Excellent. Very specific. Now we need to correct another popular idea. The pyramids weren't necessarily built by a giant army of slaves in chains. Archaeological evidence from Giza points to organized communities of workers, including skilled craftspeople and laborers. There were bakeries, food production, workshops, storage, living areas, because thousands of workers need something very important: food, lots of it. You cannot build a pyramid on "good luck, everyone." You need logistics, food, water, tools, materials, housing, medical care, organization. The pyramid wasn't just a construction project, it was a massive logistics operation. Workers weren't all doing the same job. There were different tasks and teams: stonecutters, haulers, surveyors, craft specialists, supervisors, transport crews. This is what made the impossible-looking project possible. Imagine trying to organize thousands of people without Slack, email, WhatsApp, Google Calendar. Instead, you have papyrus, verbal instructions, signals, and a lot of shouting.
Team 4! Stone 27! Where is Stone 27? Stone 27 is over there. That's Stone 28!
The Nile wasn't just useful for agriculture, it was crucial for transportation. Heavy materials could be moved by boat when water routes were available. Archaeological discoveries and ancient records provide evidence for organized transport networks connected to pyramid construction. A now-lost branch or waterway of the Nile reached much closer to the Giza area than the modern river does. That made transporting materials much easier. So, instead of dragging every block across the desert, you let the river do some of the work. Nature. Need me to carry that? Egyptians. Yes, please. Another important point. This wasn't a weekend project. The Great Pyramid likely took decades to build. Ancient sources and modern estimates vary, but a construction period around 20 years is often discussed. 20 years. That's a long construction project. Imagine starting the project as a teenager and finishing it with completely different needs. But that long timeline was part of the solution. They didn't need to move every stone in 1 month. They needed a system that could keep working. Day after day, year after year, stone, move, place, measure, repeat, and eventually, the pile becomes a pyramid. But here's where things get really impressive. The Great Pyramid isn't impressive simply because it's big. It's impressive because of its precision. Its sides are remarkably well aligned with the cardinal directions. The base is enormous, yet the builders achieved a high degree of levelness and geometric consistency. And remember, no laser level, no GPS, no modern total station. Instead, ropes, measuring tools, plumb lines, levels, astronomical observations, geometry, and skilled people. Basically, they turned "let's build a giant triangle" into "let's build a giant triangle, but make it perfect." So, did Egyptians build the Great Pyramid with no technology? No, that's the wrong question. They didn't have modern machinery, but they had technology. Their technology included stoneworking tools, copper tools, ropes, wooden sledges, boats, ramps, levers, surveying techniques, mathematics, astronomy, and most importantly, organization. The Great Pyramid wasn't built by one genius lifting giant rocks. It was built by an entire system, thousands of people, working specialized jobs using simple machines over many years. Today, we look at a pyramid and ask, how could they do this without machines? But perhaps the better question is, how powerful can simple technology become when thousands of skilled people use it together? Because the real secret wasn't one mysterious machine. It was simple tools, smart engineering, and incredible organization. And honestly, that's probably more impressive than having a giant excavator. So the next time you see the pyramids, don't just see giant rocks. See thousands of people planning, measuring, moving, and solving problems without Google Maps. If you enjoyed this journey through history, subscribe to BIBN Explainer. Because history gets a lot crazier when you ask, how did they do that?